Blog Talk Radio. Carol the Coach. Sex, love, and relationships. We talk about it here.
Carol the Coach. Compassion with contemporary relevance.
I am a psychotherapist. I can be your personal life coach, and I can help you with your issues. There are no problems too small or too big. You can talk about anything.
Speaker, columnist, radio TV host, and commentator. Carol the Coach brings messages of wellness and empowerment within reach of everyday people every day.
Almost 5 years ago, I lost my soulmate in an accident. He was killed in a plane crash. Life just, for me, has seemed to stop.
There are groups all over the city. I teach one. It is a specific way to start thinking so that you shift how you see the world, which then shifts your energy, and then you feel better and you actually see things differently.
Carol the Coach. Always available, too, at carolthecoach.com.
Now, I've got Russell on the line.
I'm 47 years old. I'm a truck driver. I'm married. I have a wife in San Francisco.
Okay.
I haven't been home in 6 months. My thing is, I don't know if I have a sex addiction or what the problem is. Why do I want what I can't have? And as soon as I can have it, I don't want it anymore.
You're right on target when you say, I don't know if I have a sexual addiction. Well, guess what? Yes, you do. And you know what? That's my specialty, Russell, so you're at the right place. Continue.
I meet women online, and I'm in a different part of the country. I travel all 48 states, so I love sex.
I hear self-esteem issues. You never felt good enough, and you didn't feel like you were getting what you should have then, and you're reenacting that now. Do you want to change that about yourself? I got an
interesting email from Rob Weiss, who says that he is really excited to be in the room. In the room is the online sexual addictions room where you can go in and attend 12-step meetings, and guess what? Clearly, in the room is a place where there is some interaction, where they're going to be hosting a television/radio show. So why don't you Google that to get the information, but I highly recommend that if you want information, in the room is the place to be. Hi there, I am Carol Jurgensen-Sheets. You know, I typically broadcast right out of Indianapolis, but tonight I am broadcasting out of Phoenix, Arizona, as I am getting my certification refreshed and going to workshops and actually presenting here in Phoenix, Arizona. I'm here all week, and I'm amazed at how many incredible CSATs there are, how much information there is to learn, to disseminate, and this is just a great group of people. So I want you to know I recruited this morning. I said, if you have a project, if you have a book, if you have an intensive, if you've got a great treatment center, please contact me. My listening audience wants to know. And that's what we're all about here. We are about educating you on sexual addiction, partner trauma, and all the resources that are out there for you. That's my mission. I have made it my mission to absolutely bring you the finest quality in terms of therapy and resources in the world. And I know I have listeners all over the world, and for that I'm very, very grateful. Typically, I have a 12-hour day on Monday, so this has just kind of been fun. That it was just 8 to 5, and now I am hanging out, doing the radio show. It's only 7 o'clock here. I'm used to doing this at 9 o'clock. And we really have some interesting information to share with you tonight. I've got Beth Songer, who is going to be talking about mindful meditations and how it affects the brain to help you focus. You may have heard me say last week that there's this new research that suggests that a lot of sex addicts have attention deficit disorder. What does that mean? That means it's hard to focus. You tend to be impulsive. You're easily distracted. And here's the million-dollar question. I wonder, if you've been a sex addict for many, many years, whether you've trained your brain to look for the next new thing, and so there's this constant need and desire to move on, to not stay in the moment, to not stay with the present, or did you have that predisposition genetically prior to your sex addiction, and that's what made sex addiction such a compulsion? You know, I mean, if you've got this condition anyway and then you get involved in sex addiction, it is very possible that it was a perfect storm. And by that I mean that it's very, very possible that, you know, you had the impulse control difficulty anyway. You were always looking to distract yourself, and sure enough, when you got on the Internet, when you were looking at pornography, when it escalated into other behaviors, it fit right into the brain neuroplasticity that you had developed. So tonight, Beth is going to be talking about how do you use mindfulness meditation. Now, I'm telling you, I'm a coach, I'm a therapist, and I know that the number one thing that would improve my functioning as well as my professional life, as well as my relationships with others, is if I meditated. I do meditation. You've heard me talk about it before. It's transcendental meditation. I must confess I am not regular with it. But every person that I have admired across the board, not necessarily related to sexual addiction, has said, Carol, meditation is by far the best tool you can use to self-actualize and to take your life to that next level. So, addicts and partners and family members and clinicians, I want you to know that tonight's show is going to be about mindfulness meditation. And we're going to find out, does it really reduce stress? How does it really calm the mind? What are the benefits? And, you know, practically, what is mindfulness meditation and what's it all about? Forward to Beth sharing that with us, and I hope that you will employ this tool. It is one of the 10 recovery tools. You hear me talking about it a lot. One of the 10 recovery tools that will take you into recovery and really make a difference in your life. And let me go over those 10 tools one more time. I hope you can recite them with me. People who participate in at least 8 out of these 10 tools get better faster. And they are 10 to 12-step group, have a 12-step sponsor, do the 12-step work. It is not just about going to the meetings. It's about doing the interpersonal work that will heal old wounds, make the amends necessary, take your life to the next level, and then give back. Then we have fellowship calls. You know, it takes a village, and so you've got to be able to connect to those people in the meeting to strengthen them and to get strengthened. Then it is meditation, it's prayer, it's journaling, it's spiritual reading, it's recovery reading, it's filters and accountability tools. I recommend polygraphs. I know that there is a lot of controversy about polygraphs. You've got to have a good polygrapher. And you have heard me interview Mike Turk, one of the best in the United States, and we are lucky enough to have him in Indianapolis. And then last but not least, and I know now this sounds like it's been over 10, and we're at 11, but some of these are actually like prayer and meditation, spiritual reading and recovery reading. The last one is healthy circle behaviors. If you're in a relationship, that means going out and having fun. If you have kids, it means connecting with them. If your life is all about work, It means having a hobby. So there you go. How many of those do you do on a weekly basis? Sometimes we ask you to increase your meetings. You know, I've got an addict right now that we've asked him to decrease his meeting and spend more time with his wife. So it's not a one form recipe for everybody, but if you are doing those things, I promise you that it will speed up your recovery. And, you know, I can't say enough. All the things that I have been learning, even on, you know, today, do believe is that this field is changing exponentially. And we were talking about the fact that if you are 35, 40, 45, 50, 55, 60, hey, you know, your sexual addiction is probably very different from somebody in their early 20s, late 20s, or even early 30s, because you haven't been exposed to the amount of internet porn that those men have, or women. And, you know, it's not uncommon for younger people to know how to have 20 screens up and looking at 20 things all in the same millisecond. So going to refresher courses and going to workshops is imperative if you're going to be a good certified sexual addictions therapist. And you know me, I have made it my mission to be able to help you, and in part that means that what I have done.
Carol the Coach, sex, love, and relationships.
I have absolutely looked at what this thing is going on. I'm sorry about that. My screen blackened out on me, and so when I hit it, my cursor was right on the long intro again. You know, technology can fail us a little bit, but you don't expect me to be perfect, and I don't expect you to be perfect. It's all about doing the best job that we can. And I'm wondering what books you're reading in recovery right now. You know, are you looking at your essay or your SAA book? I certainly hope so. And then in addition to that, did you know that Facing the Shadows now has a third edition that not just talks about 10 types of sexual addiction, but it talks about 20 types. I'm going to be sharing those with you next week. And then you can determine, gosh, do I just suffer from one addiction or might I have multiple addictions? I know that may sound like, oh, do I really want to find that out? But I got to tell you, you want to be able to properly diagnose what your issues are. We spent all morning talking about the fact that sexual addiction is not truly an addiction as of yet. It's not in the DSM-5. You've heard me talk about it before, but we know that it clearly exists. And we know why hypersexual disorder did not make it into the DSM-5, even though we as clinicians kind of disagree with the committee that made that choice. And I know, as sure as I am sitting here with you, that we will make it in next time. You know, it took it a while for alcoholism to make it into the DSM, and it took about 40 years. So this disorder, this condition, this illness, whatever you want to call it, was initially written about in the mid-'70s. That was the start. The first SA meeting, gosh, if I'm not mistaken, occurred in about 1982. So we've come a long way, and we've got way more things to do. This morning, I learned all about neuroscience and sexual conditioning, and so we're talking about the neuroplasticity of the brain and how long it takes the brain to reform new pathways after you have decided that you have compulsive behavior. It's not just about frequency of pornography, you know, how many hours you spend on the internet or how many hours you spend acting out. It's also the intensity to hit. It does two things. One is that it it sets up for that need for a dopamine high. And so if you have participated in sexually compulsive behavior, you have always looked for that next hit, that next novelty, and that next intensity. We know that. The other thing we know is that the more you do it, the less likely you are to find it. And so there's actually a numbing that occurs, and you are less sexually stimulated. And so although frequency is important, it's not nearly as important as intensity. And we're studying about how men in their late teens, early 20s, who have looked at porn for 7, 8, 9, 10 years, have done it with such intensity that they're not able to have regular sex in a relationship. And so they're experiencing erectile dysfunction. And how traumatizing that is for the man and for the partner. So there's a lot of things going on, and I can't wait to continue to share everything that I'm learning, because that's what I do. I'm spending hundreds of dollars to get this information, and you can tune in and make it your own, free of charge, here with Carol the Coach. And that's why I encourage you to look at my website, sexhelpwithcarolthecoach.com, or you can always email me with questions at sexhelpwithcarolthecoach@AOL.com. So tonight, like I said, we have Beth Songer, and she is a mindfulness meditation expert, and she's going to be talking about how is it related to addiction, what can you expect from it, and why is it such an important recovery tool. Hey, Beth, welcome to the show.
Hi, Carol. Thank you for having me. It's nice to be with you.
And it is so nice to be with you, too. And I must tell you that I heard lots of anecdotes this morning about how important meditation is and what it can do to the neuroplasticity of the brain. So it's exciting to see that something as simple as meditation, and yet hard because nobody wants to slow down and give it the time it deserves, how instrumental it can be in recovery. So tell me a little bit about what is mindfulness meditation in your definition?
Well, that's a bit of a loaded question, and it's so popular these days that a lot of people are seeking to understand it, and a lot of therapists are seeking to use it in their practice. Joseph Goldstein, who's well written on the subject of mindfulness, says, to describe mindfulness is like trying to describe art or trying to describe love, and because it's so multidimensional. In Venerable Thich Nhat Hanh speaks about mindfulness as just staying present so that we can see that the conditions of happiness are fully present in us right now, instead of defaulting to our old habit patterns, which are usually based on how we grew up and what we learned as kids, which, where you have to be this way, or if you're not like that, then you're not okay. So for me, mindfulness, very, very generally, is just being present to what is right now, noticing any thoughts about the past or worries about the future, and just letting them be and witnessing them, and come back each and every moment to something that roots us in this now. There's so much important information that arises in every now, and we're always so busy in our minds that we miss it. So to me, that's what mindfulness is. And meditation is really taking time for practice every day to witness our mind and to witness what we see arising, and to not feed it in a habitual way. So in order for us to really know what's happening in our mind, it's skillful to create a time in our day so that we can sit and just look at what's going on in our mind. And sometimes that is kind of difficult because we think that, if I stop and be still, then I'm going to be calm. But really, stopping and being still and witnessing what's going on in our mind can sometimes provoke a little bit of anxiety because we say, wow, my mind is very, very busy. So sitting meditation is giving ourselves a little time each day, depending on our capacity to be able to do that, whether it be a minute or 5 minutes or 20 minutes. And when we sit together in a group, it just enhances and supports our practice so that we can witness and watch what's happening in our thoughts and in our feelings and in our body and in our perceptions and in our consciousness. So that's a very brief.
Can I ask you, do you believe that meditation can really reduce stress?
I absolutely do know for sure that meditation can reduce stress. They say that the difference between someone who's just learning how to meditate and be mindful and the difference between somebody who's been meditating and practicing mindfulness for a long time is that the person that's been practicing for a long time realizes that the mind can be very busy. And when I think about our minds, I think about anything that's related to our body, to our feeling, to our thinking, to our perceiving, and to our consciousness. And there's so many conditions that are part of our being that are exclusively unique to us related to that. So when we begin to still ourselves and dedicate a short amount of time every day to staying present to ourselves, we get to notice that, anxiety's arising. Let me just let anxiety be and come back to something that roots me in this moment. And usually anxiety is something that is a worry about the future based on an experience of the past that has nothing to do with what might be happening in this now. And so I know for sure when we begin to witness our mind and see the impermanent nature of all that our mind does, all of our thoughts and feelings and our perception, even our body is impermanent. When we can let go and know, hey, this is a temporary experience. It's my job to be fully present to it so that I can live into the experience, so that I can have access to my life. That's a powerful, powerful thing. And the more that we practice, the more that our mind settles, and the more that we don't shake it up so much and make it, it's like when I teach, if you have a glass of water and you have dirt in the water and you're always shaking the jar of water, then the water is going to be muddy. When we stop shaking the jar of water, the mud begins to settle. And then when the mud settles and we still are able to maintain our stillness and we're not being reactive, habitually reactive to the fetters of our mind and not shaking up our mind, we're no longer shaking that jar. And so that all of the fetters and all of those conditions that we think that we need in place because at one time they might have saved our lives, what you're talking about with the neural programming and the neural plasticity, when we begin to apply the practice of stopping, then our mind settles, and then we can begin to remove each of the pieces of dirt as we develop greater skill in not being reactive to our habit pattern, our learned behaviors. So yes, I know for sure, unequivocally and absolutely, that a mindfulness practice and a meditation practice, when done with the right guidance, can help us relieve a lot of the stressors of our life.
Now let me ask you, do you think that this kind of practice would be more advantageous for sex addicts or for partners of sex addicts? Or both?
That's a really, really great question. been my experience that in witnessing my life and the life of many others, that we become addicts because we are always craving or seeking a pleasurable experience, or trying to avoid an unpleasant experience, or to self-medicate in some way. And for me, it's been my experience that partners are doing the same thing. They're seeking to have a pleasant experience, but because they think they might need to control their partner, or they need to be an investigator, and they've been traumatized because they've been betrayed or abandoned, which always triggers for each person some kind of learned behavior pattern in their life. And if it's happening in their life, and this practice can apply and help and be beneficial to each and everyone, because we're clinging to something or running from something that's painful. And when we're doing that, we are running from being present to our life. And for Carol, we know that partners have a great sense of incredible pain and trauma. And if we avoid that by trying to control and seek our life through another person, then we are missing our life, and we are not being able to deal with our feelings in a way that could be beneficial or skillful for us. It's the same thing as the addict. The addict is seeking a pleasurable sensation, or to possibly avoid a pain, or to self-medicate for some reason. It's really the same coin, but a different side. So mindfulness practice and stilling the habitual learned behaviors that we've grown into, and having an awareness that these are learned behaviors and can be unlearned and can be changed, is a very powerful, powerful thing to put our attention on.
Absolutely. And in your experience, do you think that sex addicts are more prone to impulsivity and perhaps some of those criteria that meet the definition of attention deficit or attention deficit with hyperactivity? I was just telling my listening audience that I'm hearing more and more information that lends itself to sex addicts having impulsivity issues and meeting the criteria in the DSM-5. And at the same time, I'm kind of like, well, which comes first, the chicken or the egg? Did they have ADD and ADHD first, and that's what also made it the perfect storm for sexual addiction? Or did sexual addiction create that impulsivity and that distraction? What do you think?
For me, and the way that I've come to learn about life, is that there's infinite numbers of conditions that give rise to this now. And sometimes we can identify whatever that is, and sometimes that's very, very helpful, and sometimes we can't, but we have to be present to what is now and just notice it. And sometimes we'll come up with an understanding of a pattern that gave rise to that, whether it be impulsivity or attention deficit. We know that addicts are impulsive and compulsive, because that's the definition of addiction, that a person's behavior is compulsive and impulsive, and it's done chronically with no attachment to consequences, with the minimalization of consequences always. So in my opinion, we all do that to some extent or another. For people that are addicts, and I work with other addicts also, that is most definitely something that we see across the line. And almost all of my addicts say that they have attention deficit. So whatever the conditions that gave rise for their impulsivity and their compulsivity, it's important to acknowledge that it's there, and it's important to be able to develop a tolerance for whatever that is, to recognize. It's like the steps 1, 2, and 3. My impulsivity and my compulsivity has made my life unmanageable. There's a power greater than myself that can help me, and I'm going to choose to take action. I'm going to take action to turn that over, to surrender, and move forward into the 4th step, in making a moral inventory, and then look deeply at the reasons and begin to examine some of the conditions that gave rise to my particular behaviors in this now. Because it's only in this now that we can have the awareness. And again, it doesn't happen instantaneously. This is an unveiling, and there's always a calibration and a recalibration going on that will come into its place depending on how we show up today. Because all of those conditions created this now. How much awareness and how much commitment to awareness we infuse into this now to understand it and to change it and to be skillful will create what happens tomorrow.
So what do you say to addicts, sex addicts, other kind of addicts? Because we know when you have sexual addiction, you're prone to having other addictions too. What do you tell them when they're having trouble calming their mind and they feel like they're failing, and they come in and they say, my mind never calms. I think I must be doing it wrong. What do you say?
I usually say then you're doing it right, because minds in and of themselves were made to be busy, to try to figure out and help us navigate in the world. It's when we invest too much energy into them and when we haven't learned to regulate them. And again, when I'm talking about the mind, for me, I have learned that the mind includes everything that's prone to arising and prone to falling away, to cessation. I have truly the Buddhist view of mindfulness. So when people tell me that, I say then they're doing an okay job. Many times people will come in because I facilitate meditations for the public, and they'll say, I just can't do this. My mind is much, much too busy. I can't do this. My mind is going all over the place, and we call that monkey mind. And I say, that's okay. Just allow the mind to do what it's going to do, and you come back, and I use the breath, or sometimes I use, I say focus on your big toe. When you notice that your mind is very, very busy, think about a place in your body, like your feet, to ground yourself, to ground your thoughts, and very often it's very much like interrupting the thoughts, because that's what we really need to do. We need to be able to interrupt our excessive thinking, our excessive thought pattern, and that tends towards brings us more toward anxiety or depression, and we need to interrupt them to bring our attention back to something that's rooted in this now, whether it be a clock on the wall or a favorite painting or a stone in our hand or our big toe or our breath or just a spot on the path of our breath, whether it be, our chest or the space right in front of our nostril where we can feel the air move in and out of our nose. And one of the things that breathing, we use breathing, is very, very helpful because we recognize that we can't go for more than a minute or two without having a breath. And that reminds us of the preciousness of life and being aligned with this now through our breath, because we can't go too long without breathing. So it's a very helpful technique, and sometimes I use a little guided meditation to help people root when they have very busy thoughts. Sometimes I'll invite a person to press their feet down into the ground to help them root some of their anxious energy around thoughts. if someone presents as being more depressed than having a very busy mind, and they keep feeding their depression, I might ask them to think about moving their feet so that they can get some energy into their body, so that they can begin to break up some of the stagnation of being stuck in sadness. So those are some of the techniques that I use.
Yeah, that makes definite sense, and they're all considered grounding or resourcing techniques. I love that because they're very doable steps that require very little energy. They really require that you notice being present in the moment. Now,
that's right.
I want to ask you something. I mean, so many of my clients ask me that million-dollar question. They say, what can I expect to see different in my life? What changes are going to occur if I start to meditate? What do you tell them when they ask those kinds of questions?
Well, very, very often, people come in wanting a magic pill, and they say, I just want to be well now. Of course, immediate gratification. We live in a world of immediate gratification, and I tell them that there is no sequential bullet points to this practice. If you just keep on doing it and keep on coming back to this present moment and keep on applying some of the teachings, keep on noticing our body and noticing our thoughts and making friends with them instead of being habitual with them, then you look back after a week or two or a month or 3 months or a year and you say, I'm a very, very different person. That used to bother me very, very much, and now it doesn't. My teacher, when I was learning mindfulness, he would say that when we begin to practice being present, when we begin to practice interrupting our habitual patterns, our learned behaviors, and when we begin to notice our emotions, and when we begin to take responsibility for them, it's not that we won't feel these things. It's not that we won't get angry. We will still probably get angry, but instead of going to the 10th universe outside of our atmosphere with our rage, it'll come down to be present in this universe. And so the practice is a gentle progression of applying the practice and keep on noticing that, keep on being present to this day. And then one day you just say, oh my goodness, I used to have such a reactive behavior towards that particular situation, and now it doesn't bother me as much. But so many people come into our meditation on Monday nights and they say, I can't still my mind. I just can't do it. This isn't for me. And I say, and I teach, it isn't about calming or stilling the mind. It isn't about all of a sudden being able to be calm and peaceful all the time and never feeling any rage or never feeling any hurt or pain. It's about applying the practice. And the consequence of putting effort into the practice is that the mind stills on its own. Peace comes on its own. An awareness of your interconnectedness with all of creation comes on its own. Our ability to see that our sisters and brothers who are suffering with addictions, we understand that, so we have greater access to compassion and kindness because we've been there. We know we can't tell an active addict to stop, but we can be present for them and let our lights shine as an example for them that I was there, and now I'm not. It's just like working the steps and saying the Serenity Prayer.
I absolutely agree with that. And so what does it mean to meditate on the 12 steps? How would an addict do that?
for me they work very congruently. For me, steps 1, 2, and 3 are about acknowledging that there's a problem and that our lives are unmanageable, which is really saying, oh, my thoughts are a little out of control. I'm going to stop for a minute and be still and stop that habituated pattern of feeding my thoughts. So there's some kind of unified consciousness, or that's not even the right word, but we in recovery fields call it a higher power, but there's something that gives rise to the manifestation of life, whatever that is, and I am a part of that. And so when I look outside myself, I know that that's a very, very large power that gives rise to all of creation, and I am a part of that. So I'm going to acknowledge that maybe that power can help me. And, step 3 is I'm going to let that power help me because the way I'm doing it isn't working. And then step 4, when we get into, I could go on, but there's just so much, when we go into making a fearless moral inventory and then sharing it with another and then again surrendering it. For me, the steps are always 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. They just take us to a deeper level of insight and understanding. That's what meditation does. When we stop and we allow our minds to still, and then we begin to have access to seeing, oh, I know why I keep doing that. I learned that behavior when I was a kid. I learned that behavior because that's the way I was taught to be in my family, and I had to be that way to survive. I don't need to continue with that behavior. Oh, but it's such an ingrained and learned neural groove in my brain. That's okay. I know neuroplasticity can help that brain, that groove, grow so it's not so deep and thick anymore. And I know that I can do that in this moment by being still, allowing my feelings, allowing my thoughts, letting them be, and then making an informed and chosen decision. And that's really what step 3 is about, isn't it? I can take action. I can be still. I can let this go. And then I can allow, whatever is to be revealed for my future.
Absolutely.
I just think that they work so congruently. And for me, I don't know about you, but I will use every tool in my toolbox to help alleviate my suffering and alleviate my pain when that arises for me in my life. And I know for sure that this practice makes those times, and I know that steps also make those times of when pain and suffering arise for each and every person, when we begin to interrupt it and develop some regulation skills by this practice, those times become less and less. Father and the times of suffering are further and further apart.
Well, I would 100% agree with that. And, it's interesting because meditation, just like EMDR, just like hypnosis, it isn't a magic pill, but it really does accentuate what can be most helpful in getting you to focus on what you need to do. Now, I know that there are some myths about mindfulness, and so I was wondering if you could share some of those myths. I mean, we may have listeners who actually, they believe some of the myths.
Yeah, I think the greatest myth that I hear most often is that I can't meditate because my mind is always busy. And again, I mean that's what I hear that almost every week. And I say, it's okay. That's all right. The mind is meant to be busy to help us survive, just like I said before. And so therefore we develop wise minds to be able to witness the mind and lean into not engaging it. And again, like I said before, the byproduct is peace. So I think that some of the myths that I have seen and heard is that, mindfulness is for taking time out of life and quieting the mind and reducing stress. It is. But really, the intention of cultivating a practice of mindfulness is so that we can walk in our life, and take that with us every moment of every day. The intention of meditation is to gather in quiet so that we can have the focused time in quiet to watch our mind. But the goal is to be able to walk with each and every moment with a greater clarity of our being, and also to walk with every moment, with every step, with every action, with every word, in alignment with that happiness that I talked about from the beginning. The conditions of happiness are always with us. So when we are able to know that for sure, then we don't have to focus so much on what's going on with us. We can look outside of ourselves and we will be the peace in the world instead of being the unpeace in the world. So it's not really for removing ourselves from life. It's for giving ourselves greater skills so that we can move through our life with greater peace and greater understanding of who we truly are. The other myth is you need to carve out plenty of time in a serene, mindful place. That is a very good thing to do, but it's not something that you have to do all the time. It's a good practice to have some quiet time every day or every week, and it works much better with a group. But again, the intention is to be able to walk in the world as an agent of peace, more in alignment with the truth of who you are. Mindfulness is for people who are relaxed. Well, that's absolutely not true, because mindfulness is for everybody, and it's especially for people who need more relaxation and don't think that they can have it because they don't believe that that's a possibility for them. It's for everybody. Mindfulness conflicts with certain religions. In my experience and from what I learned when I learned from my teacher, it is an adjunct to every religion, because it's not about religion. It's about cultivating an understanding of our being and our mind and who we are in the world. And so that's an important one, that it's an adjunct to every religion. So because it's not about religion, it's about who we are and how we are in the world. Mindfulness teachers are always mindful. As a mindfulness teacher, I can tell you that that's not true. It is an aspiration, but it's not true. I do get lost in my own emotions sometimes, and I know that many, many other teachers do also. It's an aspiration that's cultivated through practice. And I think those are some of the myths that I've heard. Have you heard of any others, Carol?
Well, one of the things that I was telling our listening audience prior to you coming on is that it is the single number one practice that can help you to actualize whatever goal that you want. And so when I say that, whether that's you want to build a business, you want to recover from an addiction, you want to improve your relationship, you want to have more discipline in your life, I truly believe it is the number one tool to affect change. And at the same time, making that statement can make other people feel like it is the magic panacea, the magic pill. And so that truly is a myth. And boy, if that were the case, everybody'd be doing it. But truly, I believe that we are such a busy society, and we multitask beyond belief. And it used to be in the 80s and early 90s, you got kudos if you multitasked. And now what we knew to be true is that it's very difficult to stay in the moment and be present and enjoy exactly what's before you, what's going on in your life when you multitask. And meditation is the number one way to learn how to stay in the moment. And, you know, it's interesting, Beth. I teach my listening audience that there are studies after studies that have said that there are 3 tools that help create happiness, and one of them is staying in the moment. 2 is having gratitude for what's working as opposed to what isn't. And the 3rd is reframing, and really anything that goes before you, you ask yourself, hey, what do I have to learn from it, and how can I grow stronger? And if you use those 3 tools, you truly will be happy. And let's face it, staying in the moment is tough, and meditation is one of the ways to discipline yourself and to actualize staying in the moment.
Yeah, I completely agree. And it's been my experience, without a doubt, that the more that we recognize the unskillful actions and habits and fetters of our mind that have cloaked the ability for us to come into alignment with the truth of who we are and be okay with that, which means accepting us for who we are. And I know that a lot of people have a very hard time because a lot of people do negative self-talk, which the antidote for that is what you said, is gratitude. Well, let me just come back to this moment and look around and let me find something to be grateful for in this moment right now. Let me, before I go to sleep, do a gratitude list. We change our mind, we change our thoughts. When we do that, we do create the conditions for our future to be very different than what brought us to the habituated thinking of the day. When people come to me, sometimes I say I use the motorcycle metaphor. When you learn how to ride a motorcycle, you can't look in front of you or down right in front of you. You have to look ahead. So when you are coming to a curve, you have to look ahead toward the curve. Otherwise, you're going to crash your bike because you have to be able to lean into that curve. It's the same thing with being present in the moment as far as cultivating the right conditions for the future that you want. It's the trick is you have to let it go. You can think about what you would like for your life through gratitude by raising that particular energy of your being, to think about what you think you might like for the future. But it's like dropping a pebble in the pond and letting the ripples ripple out and allow for that power greater than ourselves to bring that into manifestation for us. We can't hold it too tightly. We have to be present to today and not perseverate about what we think we want for our future. And when we let it go and stay present in our day, then the conditions that will potentially give rise to whatever that manifestation is have a much better chance to be created. Because what I know for sure is that everything is dependent on conditions that make things right for manifestation. And when those conditions arise, things happen for us. When they cease, things fall away. It's very much like the breath. Every breath has a beginning, a middle, and an end. But it doesn't really end. It's just linked to the next new thing. It's linked to the next in-breath or the next out-breath. But I love the way that you said, cultivating gratitude and understanding that being present sets us up for our future. It is really very, very true. We just can't hold it too tightly. We have to let it go and allow it to come and pay attention to the signs as they show up in our day, in my opinion.
Let's talk a little bit about how can people get a hold of you if they want to work with you? What's your website? How can they email you? Tell us just a little bit about you.
I'm on Psychology Today in the Bethlehem, Pennsylvania area. I also work for Sexual Addictions Treatment Services with Dr. Weeks, so they can check that website out or call that number for her website. I'm a clinician that works with addicts. I work with alcoholics and addicts and sex addicts. I also work with partners and families of addicts, and I run intensive outpatient groups. And I also have studied Buddhism for a number of years and many other different spiritual modalities. And I was ordained a Buddhist priest a few years ago. So this practice is very close to my heart, and it makes a lot of sense to me. And it's changed my life immensely, and I've seen it change many, many other people's lives, people who have experienced horrendous trauma in their lives. I've seen them learn how to do some of these mindfulness exercises and not disassociate or not move into habituated patterns of great suffering. So I hope that's helpful.
Well, that is very helpful. So if they wanted to contact you and work with you, what state are you working out of, and what's your email or phone number?
My email is eascounseling@gmail.com, and my telephone number is 610-509-1381. And I also work at Mid-Atlantic Rehab, and that telephone number is 610-419-3101. And I work for Dr. Jennifer Weeks, and I don't know that number off the top of my head, but let me look it up real fast.
All right. As you can see, this is a woman who, I'm glad you stay in the moment because you have a lot of different capacities in which you work. And to be a Buddhist priest on top of it, how wonderful.
No, it's been a great practice, and it's a beautiful. It's been helped me an awful lot in my life. So, I for some reason, I'm not coming up with this.
Well, I tell you what you can do is just email me that number in the near future, and then if anybody wants to work with me through Dr. Jennifer Weeks' practice, they can get a hold of me, and I'll pass that forward.
Okay, I have it right here. So the telephone number is 610-844-7180.
Well, I so appreciate you sharing your time and energy with us today. Again, I can't emphasize how important meditation is, and addicts deserve to be able to calm their mind and clear their mind of the anxieties and the fears that they have. So, Beth, thank you so much.
Carol, I thank you for wanting to hear what I had to say. I hope that it was helpful. I hope that it was informative in some way. So I'm grateful for the opportunity.
Well, we were grateful to have you. You take care and have a wonderful week.
Thank you. You also, Carol.
All right. So I was talking with Beth Songer, and obviously she has done a great job of explaining what meditation is to her. And that's it for tonight. I so appreciate you listening in. I will see you next week. As I say at the end of every show, there will only be one of you at all times. Fearlessly have the courage to be yourself, and I will keep bringing you new information about sexual addiction recovery and partner sensitivity. Have a great week.